There's a profound moment in a man's life when clarity hits him, and it often comes when he's left to navigate the storm alone. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, unexpected challenges, restless nights, and moments of deep introspection. It's in those times of struggle that a man begins to reflect on what truly matters. That's when he realizes something extraordinary. You were his safe haven all along. He might not have seen it when things were smooth sailing. Comfort often blends into the background, its value unnoticed when life feels predictable. But when the storms come, when the weight of responsibilities, uncertainties, and disappointments press heavily on his shoulders, he starts searching for something or someone to help carry the load. And in that search, he remembers the one place he felt anchored, grounded, and truly seen. He remembers you. You were more than just a companion. You were the calm in his chaos, the voice that reassured him when doubt crept in, the presence that silenced the noise of the world. When everything felt like it was spinning out of control, you were the constant. Your words had a way of soothing his spirit. Your touch brought a sense of peace he couldn't find anywhere else. And your belief in him gave him the strength to face the challenges he wasn't sure he could overcome. But here's the thing about safe havens. They're often underestimated when they're always available. He may not have realized just how much you shielded him from the storms of life while you stood firm by his side. He didn't see how you absorbed his fears, how you carried his insecurities with quiet grace, or how your mere presence allowed him to breathe a little easier. And now that you're not there, the absence is deafening. Without you, he feels the full force of the storms he once barely noticed. The moments that used to roll off his shoulders now weigh heavily on him. The doubts he could once drown out with your encouragement now echo loudly in his mind. The confidence he wore like armor feels brittle without you there to remind him of his worth. He starts to understand that his strength wasn't solely his own. It was built on the foundation of your unwavering support. And then comes the reflection. He thinks back to the moments he may have taken for granted, the times you stayed up late to listen to his worries, the way you always seemed to know what he needed without him having to say it, and the quiet sacrifices you made so he could feel secure. He begins to piece together the depth of your love and the weight of your presence. He realizes you didn't just love him, you protected him in ways he didn't even recognize. You didn't even recognize the responsibility he even needed me. That realization is humbling. It's not just about missing the comfort you provided. It's about understanding the role you played in his life, the role he never thought he'd have to live without. It's about the gap that can't be filled by anyone or anything else. The strength of your connection wasn't something fleeting or surface level. It was rooted in a love that held him steady even when he couldn't find his footing. He misses the feeling of coming home, not just to a physical space, but to you. There's a difference between being somewhere and feeling like you belong, and you gave him that sense of belonging. It's a rare and precious thing to find someone who can turn even the hardest days into manageable ones, who can make you feel like everything will be okay just by being there. And when he reflects on what he had with you, he realizes he might never find that kind of sanctuary again. But perhaps the most profound part of his realization is this: your role as his safe haven wasn't about weakness or dependence. It was about trust. He trusted you in ways he didn't trust anyone else. He let down his walls with you, showed you the parts of himself he kept hidden from the world, and you embraced them all without hesitation. That's not something easily replaced. It's not something replaced at all. A sideline followed. Now, in your absence, he sees the full extent of what he's lost. The moments of peace he once took for granted are gone. The person who made him feel invincible, who reminded him of his purpose, who stood by him no matter what, is no longer within reach. And that realization, it's like a weight on his chest, a reminder of the love he had and the sanctuary he's now without. In the quiet moments, when the world feels too loud and the storms feel unrelenting, he misses you like crazy, because he knows now you weren't just a part of his life. You were the foundation. You were the place he felt safest, the person who made him believe he could face anything. And no matter how hard he tries, no matter where he looks, he knows deep down there's no replacing you. You were his safe haven. and nothing will ever feel the same without you. It often takes losing something to truly understand its value. For a man, this realization can hit hardest, not in the grand gestures or major milestones, but in the tiny, almost imperceptible details that once wove seamlessly into the fabric of his everyday life. These are the little things, the moments, habits, and gestures, so seemingly small that they went unnoticed when they were there. But in your absence, those little things speak louder than words, and he begins to miss you in ways he never expected. He might have thought he was prepared for life without you. Maybe he told himself that the change wouldn't be so hard, that time would make it easier, or that he'd move forward without looking back. But it's not the monumental memories that come rushing back first. It's the subtle, intimate moments. The things only the two of you shared. It's the way you'd call his name with a tone no one else uses. The way your laughter would light up a quiet room. Or the way you could finish his sentences without effort. Suddenly, those details are glaringly absent, and their void is impossible to ignore. It starts with the routines. Maybe it's the way mornings feel quieter without you humming a song as you prepared for the day, or the way his coffee tastes different because you always knew just how he liked it. Those routines were once just part of the background noise of his life, but now they're hollow reminders of what he no longer has. He might catch himself waiting to hear the sound of your voice greeting him as he walks through the door, or instinctively look for you in spaces you used to share, and every time reality sinks in, it stings. Then there are the personal touches. He starts to notice the absence of your unique quirks, the way you'd rearrange things in a way that only made sense to you, the way you always seemed to bring life into the dullest spaces, or the way you left notes in the most unexpected places just to brighten his day. Those gestures, small as they seemed at the time, held more weight than he realized. They weren't just actions, they were symbols of how deeply you cared, and now, in their absence, he feels the emptiness they've left behind. The little things also show up in conversations, or rather the lack of them. There's a particular loneliness in not having someone who truly knows you to talk to. You were the person he could turn to with his random thoughts, his silly jokes, or his unspoken fears. You knew his rhythms, his moods, and his unspoken words. Without you, conversations feel incomplete, as though the person he's speaking to doesn't quite understand him the way you did. It's not that others don't care, it's that they don't have the history, the understanding, the connection you shared. That's not something he can replicate. It's something he misses more with each passing day. Even his surroundings begin to remind him of you in the smallest, most surprising ways. A particular scent might transport him back to a moment you shared. A song on the radio might remind him of how you'd sing along, even if you didn't know all the words. A familiar place might feel different because it was once filled with your presence. These little triggers aren't just reminders of what once was. They're a reflection of how deeply intertwined you were in his life. Perhaps the hardest, sometimes it's a bittersweet pang of longing, a mix of gratitude for what was and the ache of what's missing. It's in those moments that he realizes the depth of your impact, not through dramatic, significant detail, was a reflection of the bond you shared. And now, without them, his life feels a little less colorful, a little less alive. His hair comes from the desert sandstorms. His hair grows back mottled. His glow comes from the desert June sky. What makes the absence of these little things so profound is that they aren't easily replaced. Grand gestures can be imitated, and big events can be replicated, but the tiny, personal details are unique to the person who created them. Those are the things that can't be found again because they came from you, your heart, your personality, your love. In the quiet spaces of his life, when the world slows down and he's left alone with his thoughts, it's the little things that echo the loudest. They remind him of the love you gave, the connection you shared, and the irreplaceable role you played in his life. And in those moments, he doesn't just miss you, he misses the life you built together, one little thing at a time. There comes a moment in every man's life when he's forced to confront himself, stripped of pretense and distractions. It's not an easy moment, and it often comes when he's alone, truly alone, with nothing but the silence of his thoughts and the reflection staring back at him in the mirror. In that reflection, he sees not just the person he is, but the person he was with you and the person he hoped to become. And for the first time, perhaps, he starts to see the cracks, the truths he ignored, and the weight of your absence. Looking into his own eyes, he sees the man he was when you were by his side. You brought out a version of him that he didn't always appreciate, a version he took for granted. When you were there, he felt stronger, more grounded, more complete. You believed in him, even when he doubted himself. You lifted him up when he faltered, and you reminded him of his worth when the world made him feel small. But now, as he stands before that mirror, he sees a man who feels a little lost without the anchor you provided. He starts to notice the flaws he once ignored or dismissed. It's not that you pointed them out to him. You never had to. Your presence alone held up a mirror to his character, challenging him to be better, to grow, to reach for more. Now, without you there, he sees those flaws for what they are: missed opportunities to rise to the occasion, to love you fully, to meet you where you deserve to be met. The reflection doesn't let him hide from the truth, and the truth is, he knows he could have done more. Regret is a powerful thing, and it settles into the spaces left by your absence. He begins to replay the moments he brushed aside, the times he chose pride over vulnerability or complacency over effort, the arguments that could have been resolved with just a little more understanding, the moments when he let silence fill the air instead of speaking the words you needed to hear. It's all there in the reflection, staring back at him, impossible to ignore. But this reflection isn't just about regret. It's also about realization. He starts to see the depth of what you brought into his life. It's not just the big things, though those were important too. It's the way you challenged him to grow, not by force, but by simply being who you were. Your strength inspired him, your kindness softened him, and your love gave him courage. With you, he was more than just himself. He was a better version of himself. And now without you, he feels the weight of having lost not just you, but the version of himself that existed when you were near. This moment of reflection isn't without pain. In fact, it's often overwhelming. He sees the ways he let himself fall short, not just for you, but for himself. He starts to realize that he didn't just lose you. He lost the trust and respect he wanted to have for the man in the mirror. That's a difficult truth to face. It's not easy to admit when you've been your own worst enemy, especially when the consequences of those choices are so deeply felt. But with this pain comes a deeper understanding. He starts to see that loving someone isn't just about being there when it's easy. It's about showing up consistently in the ways that matter most. It's about listening, learning, and growing, even when it's uncomfortable. It's about being willing to look at yourself, truly look, and confront the parts of you that need work. He didn't fully understand that before, but now, standing alone with his reflection, he begins to grasp it. This moment of reckoning is transformative, even if it doesn't feel that way at first. It's not just about missing you, though he does, desperately. It's about missing the opportunity to be the man he wanted to be for you and for himself. It's about realizing that the love you gave him wasn't just a gift, it was a responsibility. And in the quiet of his reflection, he starts to see how he could have carried that responsibility differently. He might not have the chance to make things right with you, and that thought stays with him. But this moment of reflection is also an opportunity, a turning point. He can't change the past, but he can learn from it. He can take the lessons you taught him through your words, your actions, and your love, and use them to become better. Not for anyone else, but for himself. Because if there's one thing your absence has taught him, it's that true love leaves an imprint. It shapes you, challenges you, and leaves you with a choice to grow from it or to let it consume you. As he faces his reflection, he knows he can't undo what's been done, but he can honor what you meant to him by striving to be better. And while that reflection may still carry the weight of regret, it also carries a spark of hope. A hope that someday he'll look into that mirror and see a man who took the pain of losing you and turned it into a reason to grow, to heal, and to become someone worthy of the love he once held in his hands. There's an undeniable stillness that comes with realizing something vital is missing. It doesn't always strike suddenly. Often it creeps in slowly, settling into the quiet corners of life until it becomes impossible to ignore. For a man, this realization often manifests as a profound void, a hollow space in his life where you used to be. It's not always easy to put into words, but the absence is felt in every part of his day. It's in the routines, the conversations, and the silences. It's in the things he once took for granted and the moments he never thought to cherish enough. At first, he might try to dismiss it. Life is busy and distractions are everywhere. Work, hobbies, friends. There's no shortage of ways to fill the hours. But no matter how much he tries to keep moving, that emptiness lingers. It shows up in the spaces where your presence used to shine the brightest. The morning coffee that used to taste better when you made it. The laughter that used to fill the air during casual conversations. The comfort of knowing that no matter how hard the day was, there was someone waiting to share it with him. As the days go by, the void becomes more pronounced. It's not just the big, obvious moments that feel empty. It's the little things he never thought would matter so much. He misses the way you'd nudge him when something funny happened, or the way you'd casually reach for his hand during a quiet moment. He finds himself looking at the empty side of the couch where you used to sit, or hearing the echo of your voice in the spaces where you once filled the room with your energy. It's these subtle reminders that hit the hardest, not because they're dramatic, but because they were such an integral part of his life that he didn't notice their importance until they were gone. This void isn't just about physical absence, it's emotional too. You were the person he could turn to with his thoughts, fears, and dreams. You were the one who truly listened, who understood him in ways no one else did. Without you, he feels like a part of himself is missing, like there's no one who quite sees him the way you did. He starts to notice the emptiness in conversations with others, the lack of depth that once came so naturally with you, the inside jokes that no one else would get, the shorthand you developed together, the comfort of being fully known. It's all gone now, and its absence is deafening. The void extends beyond the emotional, weaving its way into his sense of purpose and identity. You weren't just part of his life, you were part of him. With you, he felt grounded, as though he had someone to share not just his successes, but his struggles. You gave his days meaning in ways he didn't fully comprehend at the time. Without you, he feels unmoored, like he's drifting through life without the anchor you once provided. He starts to question things he never questioned before. what he wants, who he is, and what really matters. And in those moments of introspection, he realizes just how much of his happiness was tied to the life you built together. There's a deep loneliness that comes with this void, a sense of isolation that no amount of external noise can drown out. It's not just about missing someone, it's about missing the connection, the intimacy, the bond that you shared. It's about realizing that no one else can fill the space you left behind because that space was uniquely yours. It's a void shaped by your laughter, your love, and your presence. And it's a void that lingers no matter how hard he tries to ignore it. He might attempt to fill the void with distractions, new hobbies, new relationships, new routines, anything to cover up the emptiness. But these efforts only highlight what's missing. No matter how much he tries to move forward, there's a part of him that's stuck, still yearning for the life he had with you. He starts to understand that the void isn't just about losing you. It's about losing the life you built together, the dreams you shared, and the future he once envisioned with you in it. Over time, he begins to see that the void is more than just absence. It's a reflection of how much you meant to him. It's a testament to the depth of your connection and the impact you had on his life. He realizes that the void wouldn't feel so vast if you hadn't been so important, if your presence hadn't brought so much light into his world. And while that understanding brings some clarity, it also brings a bittersweet ache. He knows now that he didn't just lose a partner, he lost a part of himself. In the quiet moments, when the world slows down and he's left alone with his thoughts, the void becomes impossible to ignore. It's in these moments that he truly understands the magnitude of your absence. It's not just about what's gone, it's about what he didn't fully appreciate when he had it. The laughter, the love, the little moments that made life brighter. They were the things that gave his life depth and meaning, and now without them, he's left with a void that serves as a constant reminder of what he's lost.